And from what I see here, the recording has started. I just want to say good morning, Alan, and welcome to this bit of a session that you and I have, just a dialogue that I thought would be great for people to get to meet you. So this is designed for a group of seniors that we will be, talking to about fraud and fraud prevention and things like that. And you being in the position that you are, I know you are a wealth of knowledge, and I just wanted to tap into that today. And I guess this is really timely as well because this is around about the Christmas season that we're doing this. So this tells me that there's probably an slight increase in what's happening in the fraud world. So maybe before we even talk about that, just tell me a little bit about who Alan is and what has him in the walls of the bank today.
You bet. Well, good morning, and thanks for having me. Was looking forward to all of this discussion. Well, let me start. We'll jump right into it. I'll start a bit about myself. So, I am a bit of a unicorn in that I've from the from grade two wanted to be a banker, and that's what I did for my whole career. So I've been in banking for 33 years now, and been across the province from north to south, seen lots of communities, uh, and done pretty well every role there is in a branch for sure, and many that don't exist today as well. But I was a teller, I was in sales, I was a loan accounting officer, I was an assistant manager, I was a branch manager, and everything in between there. And then even went in to do some human resources, some agency stuff as well, which ATB is specific to. But and now a managing director overseeing several branches within a given market. So quite a bit of stuff there. And just really fast on a personal note, uh, you mentioned seniors. I guess depends on when you call a person a senior citizen. There's only one more year and I'll be 55, so not far off. And in some places, that's classified as a senior. But so I'm 54 and married and two kids and two dogs at home.
Awesome. Good stuff. And I think, when I'm hearing 50s, I'm thinking that's a wealth of knowledge, that's wisdom. And one thing that I really like to do, this is just on a side note personally, I love to tap into the wisdom of those who have gone into these positions before us. Because sometimes I think there's a bit of a disconnect between the generations, there's a bit of that gap. So I really love to narrow that divide and tap into the wealth of knowledge that you've seen and really the changes. What has changed? Because a lot of the times we think we're ready for, or we think we're prepared and safeguarded around things like fraud, but that's maybe, the times are changing, and because times are changing and we're not, we think we're ready, but that's because of information that's based off of, I don't know, 3 years ago. What's happening now? Those are things that we'll talk about in the discussion. And I have a series of questions. I have a list of questions, but I'm probably just going to glance at these questions every now and then. But really, I just want this to be a bit of a flow in terms of, just dialogue conversations. Let's talk about what's happening out there. And maybe the first question I'll ask, which is off the script, is what's your take with the season that we're in? So Christmas season, holiday season, is there an increase in fraud? And if so, how is that reflected on your end? What are you seeing on your end as, someone who's in the banking world?
Yeah, it's that's a tricky question. I definitely see an uptick in fraud, and uh, where I would go is there's two things that the bad actors are drawing on. One is this is a time many of us open our hearts and our compassion to those in need. And so there's maybe some of our guard goes down because we want to help people in need. And so the bad actors take advantage of that for sure. The other piece that happens is there is so much activity with advertising, media, security, and so forth that's happening in this season that the bad actors take advantage to throw you off kilter. I'll say the word confuse us by just berating us with so much information that we lose track of where things are. And we tend to also bring our guard down when we're distracted, when we're not focused on one specific thing because 10 things are coming at us. And so they also take advantage of that as well.
Wow, yeah. And what would you say around that the mission and mandate for ATB is?
Yeah, if I step backwards for a second, ATB was created by the provincial government, and it was created about 90 years ago when other banks were leaving the province because Alberta was struggling at that time, and it created a big challenge for communities when the banks were pulling out. So the province created ATB. Our first branch was opened up in Rocky Mountain House, and from there has opened up several more. To give people just a sense, we have 153 branches across the province and 118 agency locations, which tend to be smaller locations in some smaller communities where typically a bank would go. The key with this um, ultimately is the mandate then for us was to serve Albertans and help the province prosper. When you bring that back into sort of the fraud prevention front and awareness front, what we try to do as we're engaging with all clients, and especially when we're engaging with seniors, we're going to ask more questions to understand what's happening. We're going to try to be that voice of maybe reason or calm, or um, the voice that's going to question to make sure you're on the right track. And I know some days people can take that as, well, it's none of your business. Why are you asking? It's not, because we're trying to be nosy. We're trying to make sure that you're being um, directed, if someone else is directing you in the background, that you're being directed in an appropriate way, and it's just a safeguard for everybody as well. So that's certainly one of the activities we do. The other activity we do is we try to have conversations, even if it's a 2-minute conversation with clients as they walk into the branches, around fraud prevention. A simple thing: don't ever share your password. We'll never ask for your passwords. And we do this in the Edmonton area, the greater Edmonton area. And I actually took a peek because we track them. We have, since April 1st to basically Saturday, we did 75,000 conversations with clients walking in and giving them some type of guidance or tip towards preventing frauds.
Wow, 75,000.
Yes.
And this is across Alberta.
So this initiative was taken specifically across the greater Edmonton location. That's 53 of our branches and about 30 of our agencies. So about 80 locations. We just took an initiative to say, let's do this to make sure our clients are protected. From an enterprise perspective, one of the things that we did is when you signed into your online banking or your mobile banking, there was an immediate pop-up that said, would you like some training on phishing and fraud prevention? And so that was pushed out as an enterprise. So anybody using our systems would have seen that invite. And it was a 30-minute training program that we had for clients and awareness.
Oh wow, that is awesome, Alan. And what was the uptake on that? Because I'm thinking if I saw a notification like that, I'm thinking the word fraud is already there. I'm thinking, do I really want to take this on, or maybe I'll just step into the branch and someone will talk to me. So what was the uptake on that?
That's a great question, and I don't have the answer. I wasn't given the information yet. I'll have to check to see if we have it. I know myself personally, I did not take it. I actually wish I did, but to your point, it was busy and it was never got to it. We do specific training for our employees every single month, as well as on an annual basis. There's a major one, and then mini learnings every single month as well. So I found it a bit redundant to have to do it, but I should go back and do it.
Awesome, that's good. Are these in person or these are remote? Is there a remote option as well where one can just click and maybe play a video that's pre-recorded?
So the training specifically for the employees it's digital. It is on our computers, and embedded in it is sometimes videos as to how things may work or look. And so we do that. And I suspect the 30-minute training that we had for the public would have had some of the videos, because it's great to see a screen and be able to see, here are things to look for, and go from there.
Totally, I think so. I think one of the key things for me anyway, when it comes to sessions like that, is the ability to click and pause and then go try it out on my account and see if I see the same screen, and then go back to the video. Because again, we learn differently, and sometimes I'll slow down videos. I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. So that is over there. Well, that seems to have moved, because obviously systems are changing every now and then, but it just takes a minute or two. You find exactly what you're looking for. So kudos to you all for doing that. I think that's really key. So from a senior's perspective, as I'm hearing, don't share your password, I'm thinking, but I've shared my password with my kids or with my grandson because they actually help me with online banking.
Mhm.
Is there anything else in addition to don't share your password that qualifies that, or is it just I shouldn't have done that? Because I just don't know how I would have been able to go online or do online banking without sharing my password.
Yeah, this is one of those conundrums that we recognize people need support or assistance from time to time from family. Uh, the if you look at banking in general, the your password, and I was thinking about this morning, is if you think about, I'll go back to a bank card for a second. You have
Okay.
your code that you would enter into the bank machine, and we call it your PIN.
Hmm.
PIN is an acronym, and it stands for Personal Identification Number. Another way to put it is it's you. So the minute you give somebody your PIN and they can key it in, as far as anybody's concerned, that's you. And you don't have the ability to say it wasn't me anymore, because
Mm.
you gave away this PIN. And so, sadly, in the 33 years that I've seen banking, is we have this thing called friendly fraud that can happen from time to time. And that is where it's actually a friend or a family member or a child or a sibling who knows your PIN, because maybe out of convenience you gave them the PIN, went into your wallet or your purse, grabbed the bank card, went and used it. And that's no different between online banking or even mobile banking. The minute you give away your login identification, your passcode, you've opened the door for a possibility of friendly fraud, let alone a third party that we don't know from somewhere else. Even friendly fraud is there. So when bankers tell you never give your passwords away, your login away, they are being very genuine in that. And that includes never give it to a banker. We don't need your password, your logins. If we're asking it, you should question it.
Mm. Wow, that's good. And I'm thinking as well, because you don't know what my password is, I'm also thinking, what if my password is 1234? I guess you would never know that, because I'm thinking personally, what I would want to do is maybe advise people to not make it as easy as 1234. But I guess you wouldn't be able to do that because you can't even see that. I guess the pin is encrypted, so you wouldn't even be able to see that it's a 1234. All you can do is just deliver the message, hey, make sure your password is not as predictable as 4321 or something like that. I'm just thinking, how do you? I guess it's just the information that you provide to them. This is well, what's a recommended password? Maybe that's a question that I could ask. How would you? Any recommendations around passwords? Because I'm thinking I will go for what I won't forget. Because if I make it 3251, I might forget that, but 1234 is easy to remember. But what's your recommendation around creating passwords?
Yeah, this is unlike a grocery list. Here are things you shouldn't do as compared to a grocery list of, honey, go pick these items up. So things that you shouldn't do is don't use your birthday, don't use your address, don't use your phone number, don't make it those simple 1234 4321, 1111. Don't make it any of those. So definitely passwords need to be a little more tricky. And then if you think of longer passwords where it's 8 items long, you'll want to use uppercase, lowercase, a number, a special character. What I've seen more and more is people using a statement. So, for example, the statement could be, I love dogs. And instead of the letter I, they use the exclamation point. Instead of the O in dog, they use a 0. So that's how they get a numeric character, they get a special character, and then they get letters as well. So a statement, which may be easier to remember for you, but then replace some characters, some alphabets with special characters, as well as numeric values.
Awesome. That's really good. I've also heard that one, and I love that. And sometimes they'll go as much as going, make it a statement, and then you pull out maybe the first letter of that statement. So my password is going to be intricate or complex, right? So M, P, all the way to complex. So things like that, those are tricks that people could do. And I find those helpful. Sometimes I guess even the alphabetical, the lowercase, the exclamation mark, special characters, all that. So yeah, great tip, Alan, on that. My next question here, let me see which one I'm going to pick. Tell me a little bit about, because one of the things I find is I can relate to stories of, fraud happening, because I'm like, man, that almost happened to me. I remember one time, this might not necessarily be banking related. Actually, well, it technically is, because I did give my credit card information. It was a website that I got. Coincidentally, this was a season I was looking to buy a gift for my wife. And she didn't want one. She's just like, I don't know, one day I'll get a new cell phone. And coincidentally, an ad pops up in my email. The Apple Store is giving away for something about giving away phones. There's a special competition. Phones are $1 or something ridiculous like that. And I thought, okay, this is something that is, I don't know, there's got to be something that will help me in this, somewhere down this trail. And I clicked, I swiped, and right after putting in my credentials, I'm thinking, this is impossible. There was a newspaper article as well. So a newspaper article, realistic, the Gazette, I don't remember what it was, and it had this article on what was happening at the Apple Store. And I thought, okay, it's one of those Black Friday, Boxing Day type of deals. And I put in my information and I thought, that's impossible. I think I just got duped. So I quickly called the bank and then we stopped that transaction. In your line of work, what have you seen being something that's common that maybe I, listening to this, can relate to that and go, ooh, I have to be careful about those text messages, or I have to be careful about those phone calls. What have you seen in your world that has been, maybe just give me 2 examples of what you've seen that's been crazy.
Sure, I'll share 2, and this is happening more commonly, which is always concerning. And they're 2 kind of opposites. So one is on the tech side. One is a pretty basic fraud, but it sadly gets through quite often. So the first one is on the technology side, is where people are so used to doing an internet search, be it Google or Bing or whoever they use. They'll do a search to find something.
Right.
And so they'll search for their bank, whichever bank it is. I'm simply going to use ATB as the example because I know the exact URL address. So a person's looking for ATB Financial, they'll Google ATB Financial, and you have to remember the search engine is then pulling up multiple things that are similar as well as ATB.
Mm-hmm.
So what can happen is fraudsters can create a website that may look like ATB, and the real ATB website is atb.com. That simple. But what they may have done is created one that says albertatreasurybranch.com, atbbank.com, and you see it quickly and you go, oh, that's the site. They click on it. And the fraudsters have time on their hands. So what they do is they'll create, once you click on it, another web page that looks like the online banking site that you would normally go to. And so you would innocently key in your login identification, your password, which remember I said, never share those, but now you innocently thinking you're at atb.com, you're not, you're actually at a fraudster site, and you've just given them your credentials. And then what they do is they immediately pick it up and they go to try to log into your computer or onto your online banking. And it may trigger what's known as a two-factor authentication or a multi-factor authentication. And you're going to get a notice saying, here's a password. And you will think that you're actually signing into the site. Yeah, this is normal. I should get it. And then you key it into the fraudulent site, which you're actually giving to the fraudsters. And now they've on the real site are logging into your online banking. So that's one of the frauds we see. And the best way to avoid that is to go to the URL line and type the actual website of the bank. So atb.com, hit enter, and you're going to our website directly. If you don't know what the website is for your bank, go to your bank card. On the back of your bank card, it tells you what the phone number for the bank is, what the website is. And that's a trusted source, your bank card. So you know that that information is accurate and that's what you want to do. So that's one example where people are using, the fraudsters are using technology to acquire that information. The second way, this is on the phone, and it's crazy. Phones have been around for about 150 years, and yet fraudsters still use it to trick us. And so what's been happening is that fraudsters will create a caller ID that says ATB Financial. And remember, caller ID is not secure. It is not a definitive identification of who's calling you. So what happens is they'll spoof ATB Financial on the caller ID. You pick it up and they'll say, this is the bank. We're doing maintenance on the online banking. So please don't sign in for the next hour. But to make sure that this is you, we need you to give us your passcode, your multi-factor authentication, whatever those items are. And people will innocently go, oh, okay, so you're the bank, you're doing maintenance. Sure, here are my codes, and gives the fraudster the information. And the fraudster just said, don't sign in for an hour, because what they're doing is they're taking that hour to now defraud your online banking. And so what I would always say to people from that perspective is, just because someone calls you and claims to be somebody, the CRA, the police, the bank, does not mean they are. The best thing to do is, if you don't know who the person is on that other line, hang up, go back, for example, to your bank card, look for the phone number that you know is a trusted phone number, call that number, and then ask to speak to the person that had called you, and they'll transfer you over. But those are simple ways just to protect yourself. And it's a, things that we're so used to searching things on the internet, where someone calls and says, this is who I am, here's what I need. We're so used to trusting those mechanisms that fraudsters have used that as a means to defraud us.
Yeah, I heard this one story of someone who was actually on a call with the fraudster, and then they called the bank. And bank answered, they talked to the bank briefly, and then they went back to the fraudster, and then the fraudster said, hey, so what are they saying? The person regurgitated everything the bank was saying, and the fraudster said, that's exactly what fraudsters ask. Hang up on them and, don't give them any information. And they walked away with whatever transaction it was, because they flipped the script. And it is true, we have to be diligent when dealing with some of this. And I think I like your tip on hang up, call the bank. You be the one in control. You call, hang up, call them and say, hey, would I get a call like this from the bank? And then that way you make sure you're terminating the communication with whatever individual you're suspicious of, and then you take control of that.
Correct.
Tell me a little something about two-factor authentication, Alan, because I know it happens in multiple different ways. So I'm just thinking, I've seen that message pop up on my banking info to say, hey, go ahead and get the two-factor authentication. I've been hesitant to do that. Tell me a little more about that two-factor authentication. How does it work?
Yeah, so two-factor authentication is basically another layer. Think of a layer cake. You're layering more and more security to add depth to the security. So your first line of security, your defense, is your login identification, because it is unique. Then your second layer, if I was to use that cake analogy, is your password or your passcode. And two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication is another layer. And what that does is it says, even though you've entered in your login identification, even though you've entered in your password and they are correct, we want to double check and make sure by sending a code to a different communication method, be it a text, be it an email. So you have to go to now a different site, get the information and put in the code, which then says, yes, it's me. Please go ahead and move forward in the transaction or the signing in. And that is, if you look at the retail industry as a whole, so not just banking, they use that as an added layer. So it may be a multifunction or multi-factor authentication, a one-time password, OTP. You may hear that acronym as well. But that's what it's designed to do, is add one more layer to say, even though these two items have been correctly passed, we want to add a third layer in as well. And the code is only good for one use, and then it is of no use again.
Awesome. That has definitely saved quite a bit, even on my end with multiple websites and things like that. And I think this is why it's important for us as users to always keep our information up to date. Because you can imagine you've set up multi-factor authentication and then maybe you change phone numbers, maybe you change emails, you don't check your email and you don't inform the bank. So I think it's crucial that whenever you have the multi-factor authentication to always be in a position to, hey, let me update my information with the bank. This is my new phone number, or this is my new address, whichever it is. Always, always very helpful. And I know that from experience where I'm like, oh no, I haven't changed my phone number, but the authentication has gone to a different number. Good thing though, the bank always has multiple layers where you can then send it to an email and things like that.
Yes.
And what advice would you give to a senior who's considering using maybe more of online banking, but they're afraid of falling victim to all these things technologically that maybe they're not aware of? What steps would you recommend? Can they come over to the bank and say, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing? Can someone walk me through how to do this? Does this work? Is this safe? How can the bank handhold someone trying to jump into the digital space?
That and I think that in itself is the answer. Is if you're curious about online banking and mobile banking, and just so to make sure the audience understands, online banking is typically you signing into your computer. Mobile banking is you're using a smartphone or a tablet or an iPad and you're doing mobile banking. So in case you're wondering which one we're speaking of, but same idea. What we always recommend for anybody is ask us to do a demo with you. So if we sign you up for online banking, ask us if you could sign in right away and access it and play with it. And we can show you, here's how you pay a bill. Here's how you transfer money between your checking and your savings. Here's how you can inquire. Here's how you can look at a history. Here's how you can get a direct deposit form, you name it. We can do all those demos with you and we'll take our time. So never be shy to ask the bank, because we're here to help you. And it's much easier to spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes with you, giving you a demonstration, than spending half an hour with you talking about how you're defrauded and dealing with that. So don't be shy, ask. And don't be shy to ask if you need multiple times to say, I forgot, can you show me again? The other thing that we've done is we've asked clients from time to time to bring their device with them. So if they have a tablet or if they have a phone, they may feel more comfortable saying, show me on my phone, show me on my tablet, because I don't understand how to do it. And so we can show them, and we can show them, for example, I mentioned earlier, type in the URL address, don't Google search it, and we can show you, here's how you would do it on your device. So it feels more familiar. If you're bringing your, let's say the person has a laptop, we can even show you how to bookmark it so you know it's a secure site every time you go to the bookmark. So we can do those as well to help a person understand it.
Awesome, good stuff. Thank you, Alan. And just a few more questions. I know they were back in the day, there used to be issues about cloning cards. Does that still happen, or is that a wave that passed because of security measures that the banks have taken? Now there's no cloning of cards, or is that still a thing where people put these films on top of pins and someone could clone your card? Does that still happen, or that's a thing of the past?
It for every type of added security we put in, the fraudsters are always trying to crack the code. So it can still happen. So think of your debit card today has the chip in it as well, but they're able to still clone those cards from time to time. And that's why your PIN is that critical item that you never want to be able to share. So it is possible for people to do it. The wonder with technology is it creates convenience, but the wonder with it is it creates a means sometimes for fraudsters to try to outsmart the systems that we put in. So you'll continue to see that layers continue to grow, and that cake will just get bigger and bigger and bigger and more defensive as time goes on.
Yeah. And then in terms of, I don't know, is it possible if I suspect, I don't know, there's $750 missing from my account, how possible is it to reverse some of these transactions?
This is a tricky question, and you're bringing tears to my eyes. Haven't answered that one. No. It's tricky because it depends what happened with the money. So, for example, if someone had, let's say it was a friendly fraud, for example, and they have your bank card and your PIN, and they took the money out of the bank machine. Most bank machines have cameras in them, so we can have a picture of who took it. If it's a family member, it's probably best that you have the conversation with them. If it's the bank is typically saying, well, there's a crime being committed and we involve the police, which is not necessarily what people want if it's a friendly fraud. But Tavani, I just forgot the question. Too many things going on in the head.
And this is the question that I hadn't been asked. Oh yes, reversing. It's funny because when you mentioned that, I was like, wait, I think I forgot it too. But it's how possible is it to reverse that? So there's that 750 that's missing. So, can I get my money back?
Yeah, so it really depends. So in a cash withdrawal, maybe not, depending on who took it and if there's a way. If it's a direct debit, for example, someone, let's say I'm going to make up stuff, TELUS somehow debited your account incorrectly because someone gave your account information away. There is an agreement within that process that you have 90 days to reverse it. And all you have to do is come in and say, I didn't authorize that. And we'll have you sign an indemnity that says, I didn't do that. And then we can reverse it as long as it's within 90 days. Okay. So it depends. If it was e-transferred out, if the money has not been accepted from the receiving party, then there's a way to recall it. But if it has been and taken out, there's no means to get it back as well. So it really is dependent on what's happened for us to be able to say we can or we can't get the money back.
Okay, awesome. And I think the last question I'll ask, there's a situation that happened to me, and I thought this was great, but I also thought, oh man, what an inconvenience. So maybe you might shed some light on this one. So I believe I flew to Vegas and used my card there, and then my card got blocked, but I didn't know this. And I remember going over to my next stop, made a transaction, attempted to make a transaction, and my card was declined. And I thought, okay, something is definitely up here. What's going on, right? And I thought that was a big inconvenience. And then I called the bank and they said, well, you don't normally fly. Just yesterday you were here, you made a transaction in Alberta, and then all of a sudden you're making a transaction in Vegas. That to us looks like a bit of suspicious activity. The time which transaction A happened to transaction B, we just thought there's no way you'd have traveled within that space of time. So I would have loved to get maybe a call, but again, like you said, the bank won't call, right? So how does the bank deal with that?
Uh, yeah, those are tricky because when we do block the fraudster, the client is really thankful. When we
Yes,
block
yeah.
the client and make it inconvenient, the clients are usually less patient and somewhat frustrated. And so it's a tightrope of balancing of how do we make the systems in the background algorithms protective but not restrictive. And so I think, quite frankly, I think that will always be a balancing act. But without feedback from the clients, we don't know. My recommendation for clients is that if a client is going to be traveling, do one of two things. One is, and this is I would tell you your primary idea is consider having someone be your power of attorney. So you can go into the bank, there's no cost. We can set up a power of attorney and you can revoke it as soon as you arrive back. And what that power of attorney is able to do is then act on your behalf. So if you had a problem, you can call them and say, look, I need you to run to the bank. I need you to talk to them. And we'll see that they're your power of attorney. And then we can act on whatever they tell us. Uh, the danger with that is goes back to that friendly fraud is you've now authorized the bank to listen to anything they say. So if they came in and said, take all the money out and give it to me, we'd have to give it to them. But consideration for maybe a power of attorney is an option if you're going to be traveling. The second thing I would do for sure is tell your bank that you're going to be traveling and where you're going to be, and they can put a message in the system on your profile to identify that. So then what happens is, let's say, Tavani, you were traveling to Vegas and you called the branch and you said, hey, I'm traveling, I'm in Las Vegas, my card seems to be blocked as well. And they can go in and say, oh, Tabani told us he's going to be away. He told us he's going to be in Vegas. Okay, we have some comfort in it. Let's either potentially not hold it from the beginning or block it or release it right away based on your call.
Wow. Okay, that's good. I didn't know that. This is good info. And yeah, thank you so much, Alan. I really appreciate the wealth of knowledge, the time that you set aside to do this. I am almost positive tons of questions are going to come through, and I know your number. You're on speed dial. I'll be like, hey, Alan, I have a question. I couldn't answer this one. But yeah, I think the people that are going to be watching this, I know there's that appreciation of thank you for doing this, because even just with the nuggets that you shared, those have been valuable to me. And I consider myself, at around about that 85% secure, and I'm alert, I'm aware of the stuff, but there's stuff that I didn't know, and I'm thankful for that, Alan. So yeah, this conversation will continue at some point. We will continue the dialogue, and when I do get those questions, I will be connecting with you. So thank you again for your time.
I look forward to chatting again, and I hope everybody is encouraged to ask the questions. Don't be shy. Ask the questions, pose the questions to your banker. If I have the opportunity to speak to any of you, would love to engage.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Let me just stop this recording here.